Well, Kurt, it looks like New York, New York. The Knicks might be back. I want to say that with trepidation, but they're 4-3 right now, playing pretty well. What are your thoughts on New York?
Yeah, I'm a little afraid to put like the words Knicks and playoffs in the same sentence yet. Like it just feels a little too quick to do that. But I mean, they are above 500, and more than that, like it just feels different this time, right? Like it feels different watching them play. Going back to hiring Leon Rose this summer, and the smart move started then, right? They didn't throw a ton of money at Gordon Hayward or try to get in the Russell Westbrook sweepstakes for a short fix. They built long term, and they've got some guys. Julius Randle has been phenomenal. RJ Barrett maybe taking a step forward quickly is amazing. Like, it's just easy to see what Tom Thibodeau is building. He's got them playing disciplined basketball and within themselves. There's just a lot to like right now, and there's no reason that they look. Again, things are going to get tougher, but there's no reason to think that they can't continue to be solid to good, a solid team all season long, which is a big step forward.
A lot of qualifications there. Hesitant to do playoffs, hesitant to say great team. Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of young players who show promise. Randall has taken the next step. I mean, He's putting out doubles, 22 and 11 on average, but that last game, 28, 16, 9. I mean, he looks really good out there and dominant. You can see that with Thibodeau's rotation of only 8 players, he's really kind of starting to allow those players to find their space. RJ went from averaging maybe 10, 12 points a game to now 25. He's looking really good. And they got help from quickly off the bench, another Kentucky guy showing off their medals. These Kentucky rookies from Tyler Hero to quickly, they're really showing that they can have an impact in the game immediately.
Yeah, every year we're like, oh, I don't know about these Kentucky guys. But the thing is, there's so much talent there that they never get to really show everything they can do in college, right? And they get to the NBA, they get a little more freedom, and suddenly it's like, oh, okay, yeah, they can actually do all these things. They're not playing in Cal's system anymore. The other thing that's been key for me watching them with Randall, who's playing, frankly, at an all-NBA level right now. He's just playing phenomenal basketball. His playmaking and passing have been just fantastic. He's assisting on 34% of his teammates' buckets when he's on the floor. He is more than 7 assists a game. He is dishing the ball out, setting guys up because now the defenses are starting to collapse on him. That was not something that was in his game like a year or two ago. Like he's really started to evolve, and Thibodeau gets some credit for that, but Randall's got to get a lot of credit for that.
That's the next step of maturity when instead of just playing the game one-on-one, okay, who's guarding me? How do you say, okay, I know the double's coming. I know they're going to send 2 or 3 guys. I know they're going to collapse on me. Can I start playing against the entire defense? Or I'm playing almost a chess match against the other coach? And Randall's been able to take advantage of that and capitalize on those double teams, on those defensive schemes, and get the other guys around him involved. So hats off to Randall. And I love this fact that this young team, they had most of the, I think, 5 of 7 on the road of the past 7 games. So they've been able to almost have like a training camp feel where it's just them on the road, getting to know each other, building up that type of momentum, that type of chemistry, which is so essential to this team because when you have teammates that you love, I mean, you're willing to fight for them, right? And I think that's what the element that you mentioned before is that we're starting to see a New York team that cares and taking pride in what it means to be a New York Knicks, and that's a big shift mentally.
It is, and they're starting to look, they are starting to show a foundation. Eventually, Thibodeau's going to have to go deeper into that bench a little bit, and you're going to have to see some of the other guys. But what you're seeing now in terms of growth of young players is exactly what they needed, right? Eventually, if you develop these young players into something, then the next time superstar X comes along, not only do the Knicks get the meeting, this becomes like Kevin Durant with Brooklyn or something else where they go, you know what, I want to play with that young core. I want to be part of what they're building there. New York is always going to be a massive draw. They've just been it's not been a team anybody wanted to go to. That's changing. I can see this as a destination now.
It's almost like distressed debt, right? You have everything that was struggling, buying for pennies on the dollar, and turn it over. And I think that's exactly what Thibodeau is doing. They're saying, okay, we're going to shore up our defense. They are actually 3rd in the Eastern Conference right now in keeping opponents to 105 points a game, but they're last in scoring. So the question right now is, can we shore it up, make sure that, we're a good defensive team, and then hopefully, put ourselves in a competitive situation because it's all about being competitive, right? Before they were not competitive. They were out of every conversation. Now the Knicks are actually competitive, which is exciting.
This is great for New York and great for long struggling New York fans, right? It's just good to see Look, the league is just better if the Knicks are good. It's like Notre Dame with college football or Alabama or something. Like when the elite teams are good, it's just kind of fun, and I think it's good for the league. Not every team, though, by the way. How off to this really fast start, Corey. There's a few teams out there that have, I mean, who's caught your eye struggling at the start of the season where you're like, man, I thought this team was better than this, and they've really just kind of stumbled out of the gate?
It has to be Toronto for me. I mean, obviously the record speaks for itself, 1-5. But the thing that really bothers me about this Toronto team is not necessarily the record, because it's early. It's early, I understand that. But it's the fact that they're having these mental lapses in the game. They'll just drop a quarter, right? I mean, you look at all of their losses thus far. They against the Pelicans on the 23rd, they dropped the third quarter by 16 points. Against the Celtics, they dropped it a 38-14. They're just being outscored by these in these like these one quarter every game, and that's what's making the difference between being in the game and being out of the game. And they're not. For me, that's a show of just a lack of mental fortitude. So that's the kind of the concern for me right now is who's going to step up for this Raptors team and help them close out games down the stretch. Because Pascal Siakam, he's not playing very well right now. Fred VanVleet's playing out of his mind. Kyle Lowry's giving them valuable minutes, but there's just not a cohesive effort right now. And that's kind of, for me, concerning going in, actually, especially after the past couple of years. Toronto's been one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. For them to have this type of mental lapse, for me, is concerning. Yeah,
Siakam has just not been the franchise cornerstone type of player that they're paying and expecting him to be. He's just not been able to be that guy. But the other thing, you mentioned it, not only are they blowing quarters, their defense is just not good. They're actually the second worst defense in the NBA. The season's young and it's small sample size theater, but that's really concerning. This was an elite team, and I think they miss Marc Gasol and or Serge Ibaka on the back line a lot, protecting the rim. That is just, look, if you're not getting stops, you're not going to get wins consistently. And right now they are an inconsistent team, unable to get these kind of stops. They have the bad quarters. They have just unable to stop teams down the stretch or just go get the buckets you would want to see from Siakam. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel the same. And it makes you wonder with Masai Ujiri out there, is he looking at this thinking, man, have we reached the point where this thing's got to be flipped a little bit? Or do they bring somebody in? Look, their name has come up in James Harden talks. Like, do you make the really bold move and say, we can still win with this core if we send out the right pieces and bring some guys back? I'm really curious to see how they adjust to this. Right now, though, I think they're just going to let it play out and see if they can just. I mean, Nick Nurse is a good coach. This is a talented team. They should be better than this.
Yeah, it's almost what is that one game? It's the game where you have just a word association. That's kind of like is that what's called anagram? Is that what I feel like with James Harden? It's just, hey, James Harden in Philly, James Harden in Toronto, James Harden is just they're throwing his name out all over the place there. But yeah, like Toronto, for me, I wouldn't be concerned. Just same thing with Golden State, right? Golden State had a rough start, and now they're looking really good. I think with great teams and great cultures, over time, the wheat will rise to the top. That's kind of the way that I look at it. But for me, this Raptors team, you mentioned it with the defense, but offensively, they're leading the league in 3-point attempts per game with 46.4, and 44% of their offense is from the 3 line. So the thing is, that's kind of mind-blowing to me. It reminds me of like the Houston Rockets last year. But the issue with one of those teams is that if you're not making threes, you're getting blown out or you're losing these games. It's just that if the ball doesn't fall, it doesn't fall. And that is a little concerning when you're talking about these. It's almost like a roller coaster. And right now we're seeing the down part of the roller coaster. It's not looking good in Toronto, but I'm not concerned because they have a great organization and they have the right pieces. I think over time they'll be able to find their rhythm.
Yeah, that's the other team I'm concerned about, is kind of in that same vein. Portland's off to a really slow start. And again, third worst defense in the league. They've switched up their defensive system. They're playing. I mean, they went out and got all this talent. They went out and got defenders over the summer and Robert Covington and everything. But look, they switched up their defensive system. They've got their bigs playing out higher and being more aggressive. They're not just dropping back with Nurkic and they don't have Zach Collins right now. The defense isn't getting stops, and now you're relying on Damian Lillard and CJ to outscore teams, and they'll do that. I mean, these are elite players. This is one of the best backcourts in the league, but you've got to get better stops, and I think that will come around. Terry Stotts is too good a coach. There's too much talent on this roster for them not to figure it out, but the start has not been pretty, and in the West, you can't start digging yourself a hole, man. It's too deep a conference.
When do you think would be kind of the cutoff where you're like, okay, guys, let's figure this out? It's starting to get pretty late in the season.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you've got to get 50. I mean, it's a shortened season, so maybe you got to get 15 games in. At some point, you might have to tweak your defensive system back to what it was, or if you're, Toronto or some other team, you might have to make either make an aggressive move or make whatever changes you feel you have to make it to the playoffs this year. But you're going to have to be aggressive earlier. This is a shortened season. You're not going to be able to just drag this out to the trade deadline and say, oh, then we'll grab somebody and we'll kind of get in. No, not anymore, man. You've got to be more aggressive. The conferences are too deep and the season is too compacted. If the momentum goes the wrong way, these games right on top of each other are going to catch up with you.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about before with Dame's ability to score almost at will, it seems.
Yeah.
And CJ McCollum is one of my all-time favorite players in the NBA. I think he's so smart and he's so disciplined. I just love his game. But yeah, you need more, right? I think you need more. And I love what Nurkic gave them in the playoffs last year. He looked unbelievable, right? And I think so right now, I'm with you. I think they have all the pieces there. But it is concerning to me, once again, to see them off to such a slow start after last season. I thought they were going to go. Let's just say that I didn't expect them to be 8th right now. You know what I'm saying? Everyone was saying Portland might be 1, 2, 3. They might be at the top of the conference, at least top 5. And they're sitting at 8. It's kind of confusing for all of us. One player, though, that has been off to a little bit of a slow start, but seems like to have regained his form is Luka Doncic. So is he still one of your favorites for the MVP race? Where are you currently on Luka?
Yeah, he certainly hasn't looked like the MVP favorite so far, has he? No, I mean, he's done. He hasn't been great on that front, and part of it is just he hasn't been able to knock down the three ball. He's shooting 19.5% now from three. He looked better Tuesday night. He seemed to find a bit of a groove, and maybe he's getting his legs back under him, but he has just not been right. And with that, look, he doesn't have Kristaps Porzingis as his pick and pop partner, so it's just not the same with Dwight Powell, right? They miss him, but I don't think Doncic came into this season as in shape and focused as he was in the bubble. He's just, in fact, JJ Barea was on, I don't know if you saw this, he was on JJ Redick's podcast, a lot of JJs there. JJ Barea was on JJ Redick's podcast and just said, Doncic is 22 and he's been able to, his entire career, roll out of bed and beat people and not have to focus on conditioning at like an NBA kind of level yet. And he's going to have to. That's the next step in his game. And I think he's learning the hard lesson this season about why he has to enter the season a little more focused than he has in the past.
Absolutely. That's one of the key lessons for, I think, young players is when you're around great players like we saw Anthony Davis, LeBron, right? Anthony Davis was great in New Orleans. I mean, in the sense, he's super talented, but wasn't able to take that New Orleans team to the next level, right? Then now he goes to LA. He learns firsthand what it takes to be a champion. He sits with LeBron, learns from him, and now you can see he's starting to understand how to take care of your body and make sure that you can play every single night at a high level, how to come into the season, how do you make sure that you perform at a high level, Game 7 of the NBA Finals, how do you plan for that? I was reading this one incredible article talking about Tom Brady, and even when he wasn't in the Super Bowl, he would still work out with his trainer on the morning of the Super Bowl because he says, every year I want to be able to perform at a high level on this day. All right, so like stuff like that, like you wouldn't know that unless you're hanging out with Tom Brady. So,
yeah, I had the conversation a couple of years back, a while back, with Ray Allen when he was playing. And Ray Allen, who was a conditioning freak, right, and was a very regimented, almost OCD regimented about how his day would go. He said that during practice one day, after practice, he was just hungry. He was driving home. He had on the way, he had a McDonald's. He stopped by McDonald's just to get some food in his stomach. And he had a horrible practice. And it flipped the light switch, and he was young, and it flipped the light switch with him. I can't be that way. I've got to take care of my body or I can't perform at this level. And you hear that story through the NBA a lot from guys who and they've been the best player on their AAU team, their high school team, whatever. Even in college, they were really good and they were able to eat dorm food for how long? They get to about 22, 23, and they had to focus. They had to start taking care of their body in a new way because what's asked of them is very different.
And I'm personally very curious to see what that body transformation looks like for Luka. But yeah, I think right now we're starting to see him get his legs under him, his conditioning back, and he's starting to get into the classic triple-double form, 30, 15, and 10, which is just sublime. So I think that, like I said, it's early in the season. It's only been a few games, 7, 8 games. So I'm not too concerned about it because I think that, he's a competitor. And what I know anything about competitors is that it drives you. You hate to lose, and not about the MVP thing, just in general. How do I get this team to the next level? But I think this will be a valuable lesson. Hopefully, Luka learns from this, and so next year he doesn't find himself in a similar situation.
Right, and they get healthy. They get Porzingis back. I saw him working out before the Clippers game, not with any contact, but he's running and moving. And so they get him back on the floor, and suddenly this team's a little deeper, a little better, and a little more dangerous.